Ankesh is a product and a program manager at Sterlite Technologies Limited. He is responsible there for all the machine learning services being developed. He's also a faculty with Simply Learn and also a corporate trainer. And today he is going to talk about the data-driven smart society. And over to you, Ankesh.
Thank you, Muthu, and thank you, Dr. Sanika, for the wonderful presentation and the insight given. So today we would be discussing about how data is becoming a pillar in driving the smart society, I would say. But before I start with how data becomes a pillar in driving the smart society, we need to understand that data and science, which is a combination of data along with the science, which includes algorithms, whether it is AI algorithms or machine learning algorithms or business stats, whatever you call it, they both support each other. They are complement to each other. So when we call AI ML as the heart and brain of the system, then the overall ecology in that the data stands as an oxygen. So without oxygen, your body parts would not work. And if you have an oxygen and you do not have a body part, still you are not going to live. Now we have been speaking about, and there has been a lot of discussions eventually across the world about having smart city, including our country. But the whole logic of smart city, which we call it as, cannot be possible. We cannot meet smart city objectives unless and until we have a smart society overall. And that is what would be the objectives, as in how data basically helps in achieving a smart city, where and thus helps in achieving the end goal of smart society and achieving the end goal of smart city. Then we would be discussing about the DNA of the data. The DNA of the data specifically from two aspects. The first aspect is what are the necessary or inline components of the data which we use it, which we know but we always forget. And eventually the other part of the DNA of the data is, as the evolution is happening in this world with so many electronic technology advancement and data generating devices, how we can store the data in the smallest possible way for ages to come. If I happen to articulate it, so we do have in our human the chromosomes and deoxyribonucleic acid, which is ATGC. On the same sequence, we can always store the data in a test tube or in form of a cells, where there is a research going on with MIT, and which can basically live up to 10,000 years and without using any media. And then I would be trying to weave a story and tell you how the smart societies, again data backs it up, how data acts as an oxygen for an AI in generating, in giving a VOI. So the biggest and the interesting thing is that in today's world as product leaders, we always go after ROI. Whether we build a $100 million product or a $1 billion product, we would always look for what is the ROI. We tend to forget that if we concentrate on VOI, which is value on investment, my ROI will automatically come. So how data would achieve in building it or supports the AI is what I would like to discuss on that. And I would conclude the session by citing an example how from the day of a birth of a child to the death of a human being, data plays an important role, and how different industry players, whether it is telco, finance, OTT players, or name any industry, takes a pie of that cake. So I would now like to start. As I was saying, the smart city basically is always an embodiment of a smart society. Now, smart society is not an object, but it's a combination of small pods like environment, living, people, awareness, economy, governance, and mobility. All these are interwoven in terms of Internet of Things. The most interesting example is today's situation, which we are into, the pandemic COVID situation. Here, everything which we basically drive, or the overall ecology of the country is being driven, it is being driven by Internet of Things, Internet of Services, Internet of Data, which the people are using. Now, if we remove the data, my services, my embedded system, my environment, everything would be basically scattered. And eventually the whole objective of driving the economy or driving the getting the value on investment, which I call it in terms of in place of ROI, will be on toss. Now, it is to be remembered here, whether we speak about the living, so it's like home entertainment system or mobility or economy, or if I have to basically, for example, if I want to release certain funds to certain sectors of whether it's private or organization or government organization, it is always driven by the fiscal benefit or the fiscal ratio, which is drawn from the data which we have it, which we get from the historical point. The whole objective out here is any decision how my oxygen depletion has basically been rectified from the earth due to less pollution, that is also data driven, because there are certain data points which directs as in what is the state of the oxygen depletion layer or ozone depletion layer, I would call it as, at North Pole or South Pole respectively, and how it has progressed. Eventually how the people have been starting using different OTT apps to get their essential services. So wherever we go, with knowingly or unknowingly, it is always the data which basically is the first thing which we look at to. As a product leader or as a data scientist, data again plays an important role, because you would not be able to understand which algorithm to use, whether I have to use a random forest or whether I have to use a decision tree, whether I have to cluster or whether I have to use, I'm sorry, yeah, whether I have to use a support vector matrix. If I'm not clear with the data basically can be described as a intersection of business, data engineering, and AI developing system, where if we see, irrespective of different expertise, if we remove this data section, then the whole ecosystem or the pillars, which we call it as AI or data engineering or science, which basically evolves into a full grown product or product as a service or platform as a service, will not be able to sustain for a longer period of time. So it eventually gives up a basic feeling for how data is that foundation pillar or foundation stone on which we build the building building of smart systems or building of achieving great innovations. It's like, if I happen to tell you, if I happen to relate it to the day-to-day life, if you do not have a flat ground, or if you do not have a strong foundation, you cannot build an apartment of 105 stories. And it is always, and even in construction, we dig deep, and that depth is nothing but the insights which we get from data. Data, as I said, was DNA, the most important component of data. We every one of us know what are those components, but during the time of analysis, we are so much engrossed towards AI, machine learning, and other algorithms, we forget that all the insights basically are embedded in how the data is sequenced, how they are aligned, what are the missing values, what are the how is it assembled, how basically are the columns, or respectively how each column or fields are correlated. So it is like a human DNA, where every component or every strand of the DNA is related to each other, and every strand tells some story which is valuable or which is basically aligned to a business objective. Now it is to be noted that the person who understands the data and who is able to understand or read the story which the data is telling you, then for that person it becomes very easy to slice and dice and meet the objective. With If you do not understand the data, then whether you use an AI, whether you use blockchain, whether you use deep learning, whether you use neural networks or different subsections of the advanced technologies, irrespective of the programming language, the business objective would never be met. And the data, so this is how the data basically drives each and every element of life, and the business objective of the life can be termed as a VOI or a ROI. Therefore, I call data as a product in itself. Why? Because it is capable of delivering certain values which our full grown product would alone be not be able to. Or we can always call it as every product we deliver, whether it is from the finance background or a telco or a manufacturing, constructing, they are the sub products of the main product line called data. The other aspects of the DNA, as I was telling, so with the advancement in the technology of the storage, because we cannot control the generation speed of the data, and eventually in years to come, let's say 3 to 4 years, there would be a huge shortage of storing the data. So this DNA concept of data basically helps in storing the data. And what the whole crux of this concept is, every data is basically fragmented and stored in form of small test tubes. So or if I happen to explain it in a language which healthcare or any biotech would understand is, so there is a bacteria called Escherichia coli, which has a capacity to store approximately, if I'm not wrong, 10 to the power 29 zettabytes of data. Now, 10 to the power 29 zettabytes of data is a huge data. And how does it do is, it basically fragments each and every information of the cells into uh, microbytes of it, and then store it within itself. This is the same logic in which our human brain works. Our human brains, which transmits the data, which on which our neural network is made up of, also transmits is based on the same technology of storing the data in form of microbytes. Few of the advantages are, with data being stored in form of a microbyte, we would be able to store it for years to come, which would help us to have a better historical analysis, better predictive analytics, better insights, and eventually a high valued forecasting capability. By storing it in form of DNA, we would be basically we would not require any power supply. So the cost of storing the data would go down. Obviously, it rules out the technical failures. Why? Because there is no power supply, there is no RAM, there is no hard disk, there is no floppy disk. It is all on the basis of how you extract the data from the test tube in terms of electrode transmission, uh, or electric flux concept, which is basically not totally dependent on technology, and thus we place the storage media. Yes, there are certain disadvantages to it as of now, which eventually with time would be overcome. And one of the most important disadvantage, which I would call it here, is the cost. As of today, storing the data in form of DNA is very costly. It's approximately 44,000 or 44K dollars per microbyte, and this is being used, though this kind of concept is being used by highly sophisticated research organizations who performs research on the mutation of the genes of human or any other bacteria. So as we move towards the more aspects or the other side of the data, we see that the data, which is an oxygen, gives life to AI. How does it gives life to AI, or what is the objective we obtain or we get as a result when data gets embedded with AI algorithms? So we get an improved operational efficiency, the customer experience or customer delight is increased. There are immense potential of revenues, basically, which are hidden under the blanket. They become visible. So data as an oxygen becomes a game changer, ensuring a sustained business growth. Now, it is to be noted out here that the data as of today, which is generated at a speed, at a volume of approximately 146 GB per day. So this also gives us a better insight, as in, if we do not understand the important or the key value addition of the data, then we would not be I'm sorry, able to basically perform or or build products on the basis of online logs, or we would have a platform of data tracking or warehouse management or email management or spam or sentimental analytics, recommendation analytics, offline stores, or any of the brick to click stores or different business models. Now, if you have the data, so the biggest question, the $1 million question, if anyone could ask, is if someone has the data, what is that one thing which would be achieved? If someone understands the data and is not that much versed with AI ML, with simple maths, one can generate enough information which can drive the value for a business to sustain for next 2 quarters. That's the minimum objective which a person who is well known with well versed with the data can achieve it. That does not mean that AI and ML does not play an important role. It does play an important role, but we are too much engrossed towards AI ML that we do not see the other side of the coin, which basically drives this AI and ML. With this, I would like to tell you how from the day a child is born to the day a child passing through the teenage to adulthood dies, the data which a child or a human being generates basically drives all the industries. Right from the child of is born, so we have as of today an industry which takes care of what is required for a baby, for a pregnant mother. So we have baby OA, first cry, mop, hopscotch. Then we have, as the child grows, so education becomes an important aspect. So we have Byju's and other online education systems, which helps the child in gaining knowledge from the in different aspects, in different streams. As the child grows and eventually moves ahead towards his or her teenage, then there are different games, different aspects. Then when the child gets married or is basically goes into a job, then the banking, the customer behavior, the customer persona, the calls which we get, that do you want this loan, do you want this credit card, do you want the loan has gone down with delta percentage of ROI, we have a credit line facility, we have if you take our credit card we would give you certain kind of facilities on lounges. All these are data driven, all these organizations. When the child moves towards, as the child has attained its adulthood, married and move and take basically driving his or her family, then there are different other aspects like shopping. So Flipkart, Myntra, now we have Xiaomi, Nykaa, Lenskart, Nike. If someone has to travel, then Make My Trip, Go Ibibo, Oyo. So I would tell you my experience. So generally I travel a lot, and I am a regular, I would say a regular customer of Oyo. So every time I travel and stay at Oyo, I get certain points as a loyalty customer. The most interesting part is here, if I am not traveling, so let's say I have not traveled for the past 2 months because of this pandemic situation, I still get offers with respect to my interest, along with vouchers which I can use post COVID. How do you think these recommendation systems or all these analytics basically, and all these voucher driven schemes are coming to any of the loyalty customers like me? It is the data points. My travel history basically gives them certain insight that history is nothing but data. Then the Ola, Uber, and other smart taxis, they also help us. So Ola, I hope, I believe most of us would be an Ola user. And as I remember, Sai is also a loyal customer of Ola. If I'm not wrong, Sai, you also would have got a recommendation of Ola credit line, right? So with certain X amount. How do, hello?
Yes.
Yeah. So is the case with me. So guys, try to understand how is it possible that we get a credit line of certain X amount? Let's say, for example, in Ola, it is our travel data points, which basically ensures that this is my customer, which is bringing in value. One example of Ola that they extracted the insight from the data, and they ensured that a value is given to the customer, like Sai, me, and others, and every one of us, and their ROI is automatically being delivered at their footstep. They do not have to get into n number of brainstorming strategic meetings where they have to basically figure out how do we ensure that in first quarter we have to meet an ROI of 10% or 5%. In second quarter, my ROI should be 15%, so that by the end of fourth quarter for the fiscal year, my ROI should be 20%. It's automatic. Then we have different policies. As we grow old, we need policies to sustain our medical expenses, our term insurance, life insurance. And eventually, we also need people having different tastes. We go outside to eat at times as a leisure. So we have Swiggy, we have Food Panda, which delivers, another big basket, which delivers grocery, which delivers food at our home. Specifically in this situation where most of the shops are closed, how do we get the essential items? These big basket and grocers, they basically are helping us to deliver it. But have you ever analyzed what is that one thing which they are gaining? They're gaining our data. Using that data insight post COVID, the data will become one of the most powerful component of all the ecosystem, which will drive business, or which will have the capability to either make business to fall into a profit zone or to a loss zone. And all these different OTT players would be using this, putting in all the algorithms and generating ROIs by delivering values. The
Okay,
other,
and case, just a quick time check. We are
yeah,
actually at the top of the person. If you could wind off in a 30 seconds, that would be great.
yes, that would be done.
Perfect.
So as you see, the whole circle of life to death, from first cry to my big basket, to my magic bricks for rental, for my pepper fry, for my furniture, for my entertainment, Netflix, and the day I die. Everything is basically driven from the perspective of data. The whole logic or the concept of me speaking about data was to create an awareness that data in near future is going to be more powerful, and if you happen to have a grip on data, things would be much more easier to implement from the perspective of implementing AI ML algorithms, or on my end objective of generating revenue for the business. That's all. I'm now open for questions.
Thank you. I think that was a very interesting presentation. Thanks a lot again. We do generate a lot of data across different stages, and and there are different business potentials around the generated data, which can also be potentially used for more opportunities to be produced later as well. So that's an interesting viewpoint that you had put forward. With the shortage in time currently, I would request you, in case, for all the questions, if you could actually answer to them in the community itself on the LinkedIn post. That would be helpful.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks a lot again.